we're talking about real estate. Now, let me first inform you that I'm not a realtor, but I do have a little bit of knowledge about certain aspects of real estate. What we're going to focus on today are things like defining what you can afford in the rental market, having a good idea of what property management companies you should use, the difference between an apartment versus renting a house, buying versus renting, and owner financing schemes. All of these topics are very important because this is a time of the year where people are getting tax returns and they are investing in where they're going to stay for the near and in some cases the long term, the near future and the long term. So let's start off talking about defining what you can afford. Now, a lot of applications state that if you make 3 times the rent, then therefore you are applicable. However, let's really look at what 3 times the rent will get you. Case in point, if you was to find an apartment or a house for rent for, let's say, $900, and you make $2,700 a month before taxes, after taxes and any form of insurance or whatever deductions you may have coming out of your check, more than likely you're going to fall at least $2,400 to $2,300 a month. Once you deduct the rent of $900, now you have $1,400 a month. Gas prices are not going backwards. They're continuously going forward / increasing. So the average person spends about $100 to $50 to $100 a week on gas. That means that every month you're spending anywhere from $200 to $400. So let's be safe and say $300. So now you spent $900 on rent, $300 on just simply gas. Well, let's imagine that every once in a while you're a good person and you get oil changes or you eat. That may add up to about a good $100 a week. Now we got an additional $400. So now out of that $2,400, we've already spent $1,600. We still got $800 left over. Okay. Now we step into utilities. Most places nowadays have lights and gas, electric and gas. So utilities range from anywhere from $250 to $500. Let's say you spend $350 on utilities. Now you roughly have about a good $450 left. But people like to go out, people like to do things, and on average, a single person spends almost $100 a week on just their own personal social life. Well, now your $400 is completely gone. You haven't saved anything. You haven't prepared yourself for the future. You haven't even brought a pair of clothes. It has been my experience that when looking to rent a place, don't rent it just because they're going to allow you to. Rent it because it will put you in a situation where you can live comfortably. So, as a rule of thumb, always find a place where you make at least 4.5 times the rent, or 4 times the rent after taxes. Let's go to the next subject, property management companies. A lot of people nowadays are renting their homes and even some condos you can rent directly from the owner. Well, there's pros and there's cons. Yes, the owner may be a little bit more lenient. Yes, the owner may be a little bit more personable. But property management companies have guidelines that they're usually forced to stick to. So assuming that you deal with property management, I have a couple of bits of advice for you. Number 1, you're renting, not buying. So hold them accountable for every single thing that you need done. What's the worst that can happen? They tell you that no, we won't do it. Most people won't tell you that because they feel as if they tell you no, then you might not pay that rent. So, that's the first thing. The second thing, be weary of property management companies that only have 2 to 3 properties. In Atlanta, Georgia, in the metro area, there are over 100,000 rental properties. A good realtor is going to have many properties for rent. And if they don't have many, they definitely have access to many. The third thing, ask questions. Ask questions, ask questions, ask questions. I give you one big question. Before you put your money into an application, always ask, how long does the application process take? What exactly do you look at? Try to get an idea of whether or not you're applicable for the home that you are looking to rent before you put your money into it. Now let's move on to apartment versus a house. Most of us, when renting a house, we take into this form of mind frame that it is our home, and we fix things, and we treat it like a house. Well, some of us are not ready to do that. But in the event that you are renting someone's house, treat it like you would rent an apartment. Hold them accountable. Now, if you're not ready to buy a home yet, and you have children, something I think that you should really take into consideration: school districts. Don't rent a house just because it's nice and affordable. Oh, well, this house has all this space for my children. Well, which one is more important? A bigger bedroom in a bad neighborhood in a bad school district, or an apartment that is solid, although temporary, but in a better neighborhood and in a better school district? Take time and look at what you're really trying to get out of your next place, because they both offer pros and cons. I give you a couple of cons about a house. Houses tend to have insects. They tend to have issues with things like possums, raccoons, mice, and in some unfortunate cases, rats. Termination of diseases and insects or whatever are done very well in apartment complexes. However, research. In this new day and age, people are doing a great job leaving reviews. If you get into an apartment that has an insect problem, oh, you got a problem on your hands. Because it can be coming from your neighbor. It can even be coming from the last person that stayed there. So take some time and look at 3 things when comparing a house versus apartment. Number 1, what can you afford? Apartments tend to run specials. And apartments tend to be a little bit more inexpensive. Number 2, location. If you're a single person, take into consideration that you might want to live somewhere off of a bus line. You never know when that car may break down. And number 3, school districts. Even if you don't have children, good school districts usually have a better environment. The next thing, buying versus renting. I'm not going to spend much time on this. I'm just going to simply tell you. If you're not ready to buy just because you have the ability to buy, then don't. However, if you have a solid plan on investing in a starter home or something that once your family grows, you know that you can get your money back and sell easily, then do that. But don't spend more than what you can afford, because that will backfire. I would rather waste my money over the course of a lease than to have a foreclosure on my credit report. The last thing, owner financing schemes. Listen, it's simple. If I'm renting you a house and you tell me I give you $5,000 down and $2,000 a month for the possibility of buying the house, I will take your money and I will sign any paper you want me to for that type of agreement. That's not good. Rent to owns, owner finance, lease purchase, lease options. Please read the fine print. Because by the state of Georgia laws, all of those take the onus off of the owner. Once you step into one of those agreements, not only do you give a large lump sum up front, now you have to do all the maintenance. And if you miss one payment, they can terminate the contract. Therefore, you will be put in a situation where not only will you lose your money, but you will lose a house that you think that you're owning. Then there's the other form of owner finance. If your credit is good or bad, think about it. Some people are offered a 10-year or a 15-year plan where they'll serve as the bank. You don't see that happen too much anymore. But if it does, jump on it. If it's the house you want, jump on it. It helps to avoid a lot of red tape and a lot of things that can actually deter you from wanting to buy a house. Research, research, research. If you want to know any more about any of these things we touched on today, feel free to contact me. I've also attached some links. Please, take your time. Spend your money wisely. A house has to be a home. And if you don't want to come home, then your life will become miserable. Thank you, and have a blessed day.